Marcus is already inside the dream when it starts. The walls are breathing, slow, like something asleep. And the light flickers the way a phone screen does right before it dies. He doesn't know where he is. He just knows it's wrong. He catches his own face in the dark glass of a doorway, and the reflection is already smiling. He isn't. Hold on to that detail. It matters later. Here's the question nobody's asked yet. Freddy Krueger owns the dream world. That's not an opinion, that's just what he does. But what happens when the dream's already infected before he even gets there? A smile entity doesn't hunt you. It doesn't stalk or wait in the dark. It gets inside the signal and changes what the signal means. And tonight, it's already inside Marcus. So, can the king of nightmares survive something that turns nightmares into food? And if he gets out, does all of him get out? Stay with me, because that second question is the whole video. Encounter 1. Freddy enters a contaminated dream. Marcus has been cursed for 4 days by the time he finally slept. 4 days since he watched a stranger die smiling on a train platform, the thing behind that grin climbing into him through his own eyes. You witness a death traumatic enough, and the curse jumps the gap into the witness. 4 days of seeing it since, in crowds that weren't smiling a second ago, in windows, in reflections, in the dark behind his eyelids every time he blinked. So, when sleep finally took him on the 5th night, his mind was already soft, already open. The kind of open Freddy Krueger can smell from wherever he waits between things. Freddy moved in the way he always does, like he already owns the place, because he usually does. A scared mind with soft walls is an unlocked door. He expected to find Marcus cowering somewhere in the architecture of his own fear. Easy to corner, easy to break. He dragged the boiler room in with him the way you'd carry a weapon. The pipes, the steam, the orange glow, his space, his rules. Then his gloves scraped the floor, and the sound came from behind him, not below, where the metal met the ground, behind him. From a direction that shouldn't exist if he was the one making the sound. He turned. Nothing. Just a hallway, except it wasn't a hallway a second ago. It was the boiler room, and now it's white and long, and it doesn't end. He built the boiler room back, focused, reasserted it, the way he's done 1,000 times in 1,000 minds. Furnaces, pipes, heat. Then the entity dissolved it again. Not aggressively, not like a fight, more like a current washing sand off a rock. Quiet, indifferent. The white hallway came back. Longer this time. Here's where the lore matters, and I need you to actually sit with this one. Freddy's power isn't just supernatural. It's relational. The rules are explicit going all the way back to 1984. The fear is the fuel. When Nancy finally turns her back on him and tells him she takes back every bit of energy she ever gave him, he comes apart on the spot. The belief is the battery. Stop feeding it, and he flickers out. The smile entity doesn't fear him. It doesn't have a self that can fear. It isn't a person trapped in a nightmare. It's the nightmare operating system, and you can't scare a signal. Freddy went for Marcus anyway. First kill attempt, clean. The claws going in the way they always do. Marcus screamed, and then, mid-scream, his face split into that grin. Not his grin, the entity's. The smile pulled his mouth wider than mouths go, and behind his eyes, something else looked out. The entity was already wearing Marcus from the inside. Freddy pulled back, which is worth saying out loud. Freddy Krueger retreated. He almost never does that. In 40 years of horror, the man does not flinch. He flinched here. That tells you more than any analysis could. Survival tier B. He still has his footing, still has his blades, still knew his own name, but the dream wasn't his anymore, and he knew it. He walked away from round 1. The dream didn't. Encounter 2. Freddy tries to use the entity's rules against it. Freddy doesn't panic. That's not how he's built. What he does instead is watch. He pulled back to the edge of the dream. Not out of it, just enough to read the pattern. And the pattern was there. The entity wasn't random. It moved on witnessed trauma. Every time something broke Marcus, a face in a window, a body moving wrong, a smile that wouldn't stop, the infection deepened. It traveled on the act of seeing. On that half second of recognition right before the mind tries to look away and can't. Freddy clocked it immediately because it's not far from his own trick. Fear witnessed, fear felt. Fear that gets in through the eyes and roots there. He's been running a version of this since 1984. So he does what any apex predator does on unfamiliar ground. He tried to become the terrain. He shapeshifted into the smiling figures already burned into Marcus's memory. The neighbor with the too wide mouth. The woman on a train whose jaw came unhinged when she turned around. Freddy wore them with the precision he usually saves for pulling your dead mother out of the dark. He made himself indistinguishable from the entity's own projections. And for about 30 seconds, it worked. This isn't as crazy as it sounds. In Dream Warriors, Freddy turned his victims' own minds against them. Their fears, their weaknesses, the souls he'd already swallowed, all of it weaponized against the next kid in line. He's done this before, taken something that wasn't his and made it a blade. Hijacking a signal-based entity's visual language to puppet the dream. Logically, it tracks, but the entity isn't running on imagery. That's the part Freddy miscalculated. The images are just the delivery system. What's actually spreading is underneath. A psychic contagion that doesn't care what shape it's wearing. By mimicking the projections, Freddy didn't infiltrate the signal. He exposed himself to it. He opened a door he thought he was walking through. His glove hand started smiling. Not a metaphor. The skin across his knuckles pulled back, slow and deliberate, stretching out into a grin he did not put there. The blades were still there, still sharp, but they were coming out of something grinning at him, and the grin wasn't his. He stared at it for a full second, which, in a dream, is long enough for something to go very wrong. He burned it off, lit it at the wrist, let the dream fire take it. Rebuilt the hand the way it's supposed to look. Scarred, charred, his. It worked, but the contamination was never in the hand. The hand was just where it surfaced first. His fear-feeding mechanism, the thing that pulls dread out of a victim and converts it to power, started drawing in the wrong signal. Instead of Marcus's fear of Freddy, it pulled the entity's frequency, a deeper dread, older, less personal. The kind that doesn't attach to a face or a name, just sits in the chest like a stone. The raw energy spiked. Freddy felt stronger in the blunt physical sense, but his control started slipping. The boiler room came back when he called it, except the faces behind the furnace grates weren't screaming anymore. They were smiling, every one of them. He built the nightmare. The entity redecorated it. Survival tier C. Still standing, still himself, mostly, but he did it by touching something he shouldn't have. And that contact didn't leave just because he walked away from it. Encounter 3. The fear goes quiet. Freddy went aggressive after that. If the dream was infected, he'd burn it to the studs and rebuild from scratch. Total demolition. He's collapsed entire dreamscapes before and raised new ones from ash. Not subtle, but subtlety wasn't working. And Freddy has zero patience for an approach that isn't working. So he turned up the heat, literally. The white halls caught fire. He flooded the space with everything Marcus had ever been afraid of. Layered thick. More pipes, more screaming, more darkness with teeth. The full Elm Street treatment. Marcus just smiled at him. Not the broken, too wide smile of the infected, something quieter. He looked at Freddy the way you look at something that used to scare you and doesn't anymore. No scream, no flinch, no spike of terror Freddy could grab and use. Just that calm, empty, completely wrong expression, like someone took Marcus's face and switched off the lights behind his eyes. And that silence hit harder than any counterattack could have. Here's the lore that makes it devastating. In Freddy vs. Jason, the entire reason Freddy had to resurrect Jason Voorhees and aim him at Springwood was that the fear had dried up. The town buried the memory of him so completely that he was fading. No fear, no power. That's not a weakness somebody handed him. It's structural, baked into what he is. Fear is the engine. Without it, there's no Freddy. Just a burned man in a dirty hat standing in someone else's dream. The entity didn't fight him for the fear. It just converted it. Marcus's terror of Freddy, which should have been a full tank, 4 days of paranoia and no sleep, got quietly rerouted into the smile impulse, not erased, redirected. The energy that should have fed Freddy got folded into something else, and what was left inside was this: a smiling man who wasn't afraid of anything, sitting in a hallway that kept reflecting itself. Freddy starts thinning out, not collapsing, not shattering, just going quiet. His edges went soft. His voice, when he spoke, didn't bounce off the walls the way it should in a room he owns. And then the entity rewrote the dream's logic while he was standing in it. No exits, no door opened onto the same mirrored room. Every reflection wore the smile. Freddy looked at his own reflection and saw versions of himself grinning back, dozens stacked in the glass. And for the first time, he couldn't say for certain that he'd put them there. That mirror should scare him, and here's why. In Dream Master, the only thing that ever actually destroyed Freddy was a reflection. Alice forced him to look at himself, and the souls he'd swallowed revolted and tore him open from the inside until he was a hollow husk. The entity is running a quieter version of that exact trick, hollowing him out from within. The difference is there's no one left inside Freddy to revolt. Just empty rooms reflecting empty rooms, and a self getting quietly sanded down. He wasn't dead, he wasn't beaten, he was just gone from the room, and the room didn't notice. Survival tier D. The entity didn't fight him. It turned off the lights and waited. And yeah, the King of Nightmares pulling his lowest tier of the whole video against the thing that never once threw a punch. Let that sit. Encounter 4. Freddy claws back. The White Room has no corners. That's the first thing. There should be corners, edges where walls meet, but they curve away into nothing. And the nothing is the same color as the walls. So Freddy can't tell where the room ends. His glove is gone. Not burned off, not taken, just absent, the way things vanish in dreams when something else decides what's real. His hands are smooth. The scars are filling in, the burned skin going soft and pale, the damage undoing itself from the outside in. The entity is rewriting his face. Not violently, no attack, no confrontation, just slow, patient erasure, the way water smooths a stone over years, except it's happening in real time. The burns closing, the features softening. This is the closest thing to death he's felt since the night the parents chained the boiler room doors and lit the match. Not pain. Pain he can work with. This is subtraction. Someone taking an eraser to everything he is and leaving the page clean. So he dug his fingers into his own cheek and pulled. Not a metaphor, not a dream trick. He grabbed the smoothing skin and tore it back open, forcing the damage to return, reasserting the wrongness of his face the way you'd grab a door swinging shut and wrench it back. The scars came back, ragged and uneven. Exactly the way they've always been, and it hurt in the particular way things in dreams only hurt when they're also true. It worked, and the reason it worked is the one thing the entity didn't account for. In Dream Warriors, the moment Freddy got dragged into the waking world, his mortality became a liability, a physical form that could be broken. But here, there's no real world to drag him to. And that cuts both ways. The entity can't use Freddy's mortality against him because there's nothing mortal left to threaten. What it's trying to overwrite isn't flesh. It's a self-concept built entirely out of malice and scar tissue. There's no soft thing underneath to corrupt. No gentler identity beneath the damage waiting to be smoothed into something cooperative. Freddy was burned alive once and came back meaner. That's not vulnerability. That's armor. He pulled himself together piece by piece. Not restored, just present enough to find the seam. Every dream has one. A place where the architecture goes thin, where the logic doesn't quite meet itself. Freddy found it by feel, dragging his rebuilt claws along the wall until something gave. Soft, like pressing on a bruise. He worked it open and pushed through. Not a win, a controlled exit. The difference between jumping from a burning building and being thrown out of one. Marcus woke up smiling. Freddy didn't come back for him. Not because he lost, because that dream had nothing left worth taking. And Freddy Krueger has always known when a kill costs more than it pays. Survival tier C. He got out, but what got out was smaller than what went in. And the smile that climbed into the dream wearing Marcus's face, it's still out there, looking for the next set of eyes, including maybe the ones watching it leave.